questions, and then we'll get the show on the road.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, and we have 5 people joining us. That's so exciting. I might just wait for another 30 seconds here. Okay. Thank you so much to the people that have already started to join us. That's very exciting. All right, now we've got 9 people. This is great. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for joining us for this rendition of AGA Live. Emily is actually in the Borealis room in the art gallery, and I'm in one of the offices on the 4th floor. So we're still in the same place. We're just a little bit of a distance away. So this live is going to be quite a treat. We described it on our social media as a whimsical wonder, and I think that sort of is a testament to Emily's amazing and wonderful craft and art that she produces. I first want to mention that these AGA Lives are now newly presented by EPCOR. I'm just going to throw up a little video here. There we go. So we are very elated to announce that EPCOR is sponsoring all of our virtual programming. So that includes all of our AGA Lives and all of our school programming. It's a new partnership that we definitely look forward to. We have so many AGA Lives. We are not losing momentum. We have so many planned for the near and upcoming future. So do make sure that you check those out on our socials and stay updated with what we have upcoming. Most of the next ones have a lot to do with our current exhibitions. So my name is Sophia. I work in the education department, and I've been facilitating these AGA Lives sort of behind the screen, but I'm thrilled to be on camera today, welcoming a dear friend of the AGA and talented local artist, Emily Storvold. But first, I want to acknowledge that the Art Gallery of Alberta is situated on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting and living ground for many diverse Indigenous people, including Cree, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, Métis, Iroquois, Dene, Inuit, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, and Anishinaabe, and many others. As facilitators of arts and culture, we recognize the vast history of these people and continued influence on our vibrant communities. So I first want to mention a few housekeeping notes. If you are with us live today, welcome, hello. If you notice that things are getting a little laggy or things start to get a bit fuzzy, there's a reconnect button at the top of your screen, and that'll just reload you right back into the room and you can pick up where you left off. We also do have a chat function. I'll be moderating it today, so feel free to ask questions. And if I don't have the answer to those questions, no worries. We can get in contact with you after when we download the chat and make sure we get that answer to you. I also want to mention this is going to be, if you're watching this later, you already know, this is going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel. All of our previous lives are on our YouTube channel, so make sure you do check those out. If you have to take off or for whatever reason, we've got them all uploaded there. I do want to mention, though, that we have our gallery is open Thursdays to Sundays. So it's open from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. And then on Thursdays, it's open till 7 p.m. And now that it's getting a little darker out earlier, Thursday nights is a really nice time to come, just because then you get to see all the beautiful borealis lights that we have here at the art gallery. And the exhibitions are pretty amazing. Emily is going to speak to some of the exhibitions we have on, but they're pretty phenomenal right now. And because I work for the education department, I can't leave this without highlighting a few of our initiatives. So we do have 4 in-person classes that we are holding in November. So make sure you check out those links on our website, just because we've been working hard for months to develop safe programming, and we're so excited to welcome people back. We also have school programming happening. We have virtual option, an offsite option, and an onsite option. So make sure you go to youraga.ca/education to check those out. But more importantly, Emily is our wonderful guest today. So I'm going to speak a little bit about her. She is based in Treaty 6 territory, Edmonton, Alberta, and she is a multidisciplinary artist and writer whose work deals with anxiety, biology, and space. She received a BA in English from MacEwan University in 2016 and graduated from the MacEwan Fine Art Diploma program in 2019. Storvold is interested in how humans relate to the world. She aims to make art that not only reveals the connections and disconnections that we encounter, so important, but reimagines those paths that we travel in an abstract language. Emily, for those of you that don't know, is also a gallery attendant here at the AGA, and she does love chatting with guests about the exhibitions and also her work. So if you do come by, make sure you say a friendly hello to Emily. So hi, Emily, how are you?
I'm great. So excited to be here and be a guest here and excited to paint.
Yes, we are very much looking forward to painting together. I do have one quick question for you before you get going. So you're taking us through a watercolor exercise today, and I'm going to be popping in and out if we have some moments to sort of pick your brain, because we're also fascinated with the work that you do and create and your practice. So do you typically work in watercolor? And what other mediums do you enjoy working in? And then do you mind, sorry, it's a three-part question. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your practice?
For sure. So I guess watercolor would be more of a recent thing for me, or something I kind of keep returning to. But I also really enjoy working with like paint markers, especially Posca, which I brought today. And then I do some animating with plasticine and also digital animation as well. Yeah, I'm definitely a dabbler. I like working with, I don't know, paper to like soft sculpture and nylon. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm always excited to discover a new medium. And yes, I do a lot of abstract work. Earlier on, I was doing a bit more figurative work, and in school we had to do, you know, figurative training and that kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely enjoy abstraction, and I don't know, I think I enjoy it because people always see something different, and it's based on the emotions of viewers, which I think is really important. And I love when people can interact with my work. So that's like, you know, the highlight if people can interact.
Well, your work, and I can speak to this, your work is really colorful and sort of fun, and there's a lot of you can see the reference to biology within some of your work, at least I can see sort of cell work, or it reminds me of, it's sort of a nod to some of the stuff you learn early in elementary years, which is really wonderful. And it brings such a positive light, but you can tell that there's a lot of substance that goes behind it. Is there anything that you're working on currently that we can be sure to check out?
Well, I'm actually getting ready for Royal Bison's online market, which takes place at the end of November 27th to December 9th. So definitely check that out. But yeah, I'm really excited to, it'll be my first time doing Royal Bison, so I'm really excited to bring some work there.
That's so great. Okay, well, maybe we'll just dive right into this. I'm sure people are at home are anxious to get started. So maybe we'll just dive right in and take it away.
Sounds good. All right. So yeah, I don't know if everyone has some watercolor paper, but I usually tape kind of section off some of the watercolor paper. And I know I used to do it right on the edge, but just so you have some extra room on the side, I like to do, so you leave about 2 inches from the border. Yeah. And before I start, I usually like to plan out what I'm going to paint, but I try not to plan out too much because I find it just, I get bored with it because I'll know exactly what to expect. Yeah, so as you can see, it's not really scientific. I just kind of, you know, put the tape down. And that's okay if your tape goes kind of off a bit, just to keep your paper down. And I know some people use gummed tape as well for watercolor. I haven't had so much success with it, but I think I still have some at home, so I'll probably still return to it. All right. So colors, if I'm going to use yellow at all, I try to use yellow first just because it's so light and easily muddied. I love yellow, so I have quite a few shades. So go ahead and use whatever shade of yellow, feels right. And as you can see, I'm not actually drawing. I don't draw ahead of time on the watercolor paper just because I don't like the hassle of going back and erasing. And I also like playing with the texture of watercolor, so I'll kind of go in there and dab to get kind of a different effect. And because I'm also a little impatient and I want it to dry. So while that's drying, you can go and kind of build up another section of your paper. So let's pick a blue or whatever shade or color feels right. Go over top there. And depending on the effect you want, like you can go ahead and wet your entire paper. It'll just really make the watercolor behave differently. And I find with watercolor, it's really intuitive. Like I didn't take a lot of watercolor classes. Like I'm trained in acrylic mostly. So this has just kind of been exploring to see what works and what doesn't. And sometimes, a painting just won't turn out, and that's okay. And sometimes I find that the work I dislike, other people will really enjoy. So I found that it's just worth it to put it out there anyways. So now that's kind of drying. I like to layer watercolor a lot. So to layer with yellow, I'm going to do some red. And it should be dry enough at this point that it doesn't bleed, which sometimes happens. And then I'll just dab it to kind of control that bleeding. I also play a lot with the depth in my paintings. So by dabbing certain parts, it makes it look like it's receding into the distance a bit more. So if you want, say, these two to really pop out and the other two to kind of, fade, you can add another layer or something else to make that happen. So we'll let that dry a little bit. And like I said, I didn't plan a piece out so much. So if this doesn't work out, then, like I said, that's okay too. I'm gonna do some gold. I don't know, I'm in love with gold. I try to add it into almost everything I do. But this one I find is quite light, so you can definitely add layers. It's coming out quite light. I think that's okay. Let that dry. I find painting is a lot like a puzzle. I feel like you're trying to, I don't know, start at one point and bring it together somehow. And it's always good to work with different brush sizes too, just so you can get different lines and add some visual interest, I would say. So again, with the shape, I'm not going to add as much color up top here because I want that to feel like it's coming forward. So again, I'll kind of blot that a little bit. And if you find that your rag is imprinting a pattern, you can either leave it or you can add some water to just get rid of that mark. All right. At this point, I normally let it dry for a bit, and sometimes I'll work on a few different pieces at once, just so I'm not, so there isn't a lull in the painting. But I can continue on with this one if I try that a little bit.
Hi, Emily.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good, good.
Good. I think this is a really good time now that we're sort of waiting for stuff to dry. I was wondering if you could highlight maybe some of the current exhibitions we have on at the gallery, and if you could speak to any pieces in those exhibitions that sort of inspire or inform you at all.
Totally. I really enjoy being in the Governor General's award exhibition. I find all the colors and the sounds are really energizing. And then if I could pick a specific artist, it'd be Anna Torma. I'm in love with her tapestries, and I love her use of fantasy and graffiti and kind of the abstracted body, which, I don't know, I really find inspiring. And then the thought that she spent all that time with these, fiber materials, and I don't know, it's really energizing, I find.
Yeah, definitely. There's lots to be seen within those, definitely. And then if you venture down to the first floor, you've spent a lot of time, I bet by now, in the group of 7. Are there any pieces in the group of 7 that sort of remind you of your own work, or you'd like to maybe explore a little bit more?
Yeah, I find the group of 7 quite interesting because I grew up having to reproduce them. So they're definitely kind of existing in my head. But I love Lauren Harris's work. Especially, you can see the evolution when he first started painting landscape to, those really almost surrealistic lines. So, I quite enjoy his work.
And then a wonderful part about that of that exhibit is that it's a group of 7 and other voices. Are there any other voices that are inspiring to you?
Yeah, of course. I love Emily Carr for sure. It's such a a pleasure to see her work in real life. And the concept as a whole, having other voices represented with the group of 7, I think really important. Because I think when people think of Canadian art, they do think of group of 7. So it's really nice to see that, other people were making work at the same time too.
Right, definitely, which I didn't know about. Are there any unusual, is there anything unusual that you've worked with in installation art?
I use plasticine a lot. I'll even use it with drawings and paintings and that kind of thing, just with my fingers. So that might be a bit unusual. Like nylons would be kind of unusual, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, in the education department, we're no stranger to plasticine.
I love plasticine.
Awesome. Okay, well, maybe it's starting to dry now. I'll pop in a little bit later.
All right, so we can jump back in here. So sometimes I'll also, speaking of kind of strange material combinations, I also use sometimes markers. So they're water soluble. So you can, so we'll do this. And as you can see, it's bleeding a little bit, but I think I like that. So we're just gonna help it out a bit. Perhaps wrecking the paint marker, but they seem to recover. Put it in another spot as well, just to make sure the eye kind of travels around the work evenly. Unless I'm purposefully trying to, make the eye focus on one thing, which is good too, sometimes. For here, I can kind of bring that red up into the pink. Okay, so we have quite a lot of blank space still. So for that, I like to either use watercolor, or I find this creates quite an interesting effect. But if you kind of wet the paper first, and then use the marker to add color. All right, and I'm just gonna add that blue in there. So you can see I've used some blue over here and then again over here. So your eye goes along diagonally. And I find even when I'm not planning to, body shapes will come out in my work. As we were saying, there'll be like a biological element. So there's some running here, but I think that's okay. We can just blot that a little bit. Right, and because I used some of the gold over here, I think I'll use it again up here in this corner. And I would normally use, oh, there we go. A gold Posca marker as well for the gold, but I didn't bring it today, so we're just gonna use watercolor. All right, so now you can really use whatever colors in your palette that you've been working with to fill in more of the space. So I'm going to use more of this blue. And I find it interesting that when the watercolor is layered in certain ways, other colors will come through too, which is usually a nice unexpected surprise. Now, because I have this pink over here and it kind of looks awkward just on its own, I'm going to repeat that color over here. And I'll blot that a little bit. And so everything's quite light so far. So I'd like to add something a little bit darker to give some definition. More blue. I guess blue is a calming color, so maybe it's good for today. And I really, yeah, I don't mind when colors overlap. I think when things always dry a little bit differently too, which is kind of nice. So I've left this kind of solid white, but that might change. So I think for this, we could use perhaps a different color here.
Hi, Emily.
Hey,
How's it going?
pretty good.
So I noticed that you have quite a lot of natural light coming in that Borealis room.
Yeah.
When you are working at home, is it your preference to have natural light, or what do you suggest for a lighting setup?
I tend to work best at night, so I usually use like a couple of different lamps. Yeah, I'm pretty picky with like having like lots of good light. And my studio is also in my apartment, so I have like my kitchen light on, my desk light on, and then another light on. So all the lights are on.
Right. So generally a lot of illumination.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Well, I love how it's coming along. I love the colors that you're using.
Thank you.
Is there any suggestion for beginners, for instance, somebody who's never used watercolor before? Is there any suggestion of sort of where to start supply-wise? Is there any palette colors that you would suggest starting out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, watercolor is pretty simple to mix too, but I mean, I'd start with your primaries. So yeah, just go with like red, yellow, blue, green, and go from there. Yeah, and then I'm using these stone ground paint palettes, which I really enjoy because they come in like little single slabs, and yeah, they're really pigmented and lovely. And I know some people also prefer tubes because they're even more pigmented, but I find you can get as much pigmentation with these guys too.
Do they come in that cute little Altoid tin case, or is that your addition?
No, if you order enough, they come in the tin.
That's very sweet. Yeah, I work in gouache, which is also another form of watercolor, which is a little bit more pigmented. But I like that you're able to sort of layer depending on the sort of transparency of what you're creating, which is really lovely. For your art practice, where do you see sort of do you see yourself continuing within watercolor, or do you see yourself sort of venturing out? What do you think is next for Emily Storvold?
I mean, I think watercolor will probably be a part of my practice for quite some time now. Like I really enjoy it. I think if anything, I'll combine it with more things. I've been thinking a lot about combining watercolor with pastel or charcoal, which I think would be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Getting new textures in there would be really lovely.
Totally, yeah. And gouache, I'd love to work with gouache more. I have tubes of it at home, but I don't know, sometimes new materials intimidate me.
It's definitely fair. But if you worked with watercolor before, then it'll be an easy transition to gouache. We typically, in theater, we typically use it for costume design renderings, which is why I work with it, but it's very similar to everything else that you've sort of worked in. So I'm sure you'll master it very quickly.
Well, I'll try it out and keep you posted.
Okay, I'll beam out and let you continue.
All right, let's work on this corner over here. And speaking of brushes, I usually work with 3 different sizes. Yeah, so my favorites are these guys, and they're just meant for watercolor and like filbert. What's this one? Yeah, I love a filbert. This is another filbert too. Okay, so we're working on that pink. I've also been working a little bit with fabric paint. Which I find more like acrylic, but depending on the fabric, it can be quite resistant, I'm finding. But I'll keep at it. Okay, I don't know if I like that really clear line between the blue and the pink. So again, I'm just gonna do that really lightly, and again over here. So leave that for a second. I'm going to use this kind of peach marker over here. So it seems like we're really doing some diagonal lines. So I think I'm going to continue with that. And I love doing things in threes. I feel like if you look at a lot of my work, you'll see things in threes, which is, you know, common for people, but I don't know, it also feels like a little secret message or gift to people that are viewing my work. I'll just blend that. I really like that peach color with the pink. Okay. I feel like here would be a good spot to move next. Perhaps more yellow. Could always use more yellow. And I am quite messy when I paint, so sometimes just paint droplets land, which I think is okay.
Hi, Emily. We do have a really wonderful question from Janet online. She asks, do you work at all with watercolor pencils, and do you have any recommendations about them or which ones to choose?
I haven't worked with watercolor pencils in a long time, so I'm definitely not an expert in that area. But if you're, I'd say go with that if you're wanting more like fine lines and that kind of thing, and like more detail oriented work. But yeah, I usually just do like, yeah, larger strokes and that kind of thing. And then I use the paint markers to do that kind of detail work.
And what are the paint markers called again?
Oh yeah, they're Posca markers.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I know Staedtler has an affordable watercolor pencil. I've used them a little bit. And so if you're just looking to sort of start out with that detail work, maybe more of a generic brand name would be good.
Oh yeah, Staedtler is like, I love their pencils too. Like they have great stuff too. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Janet, for that question. That was really interesting.
And I do find that if you go to most art stores, people who work there are really happy to help you find things and, you know, finish your project. All right, so we have these yellow globes. I like how that green is kind of coming through too. All right, so perhaps we'll put something up here. I don't know how I like that purple, but we're going to keep with it. And speaking of supplies, I usually get my supplies from Gilded Rabbit, and they also do framing and are really great. I love going in there. Right. So I don't like when lines between things are really clear, so I'm going to bring that purple down a little bit. Blend that a bit. So I did that, I made those lines with the marker, but you can also do that with watercolor and then a smaller brush and really go over it again and again. Okay. So we kind of have an odd spot here, so I'm going to fill that in with something. And sometimes when I feel like things aren't quite connecting, I'll do a really light wash over parts of it just to make it more cohesive. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Since we've used some purple, I'm going to bring that down. I find even when I don't plan to, I'll still make something really colorful. Damp that a bit. And so we have kind of like big splotches of color. So at this point, I'd usually kind of go in and add more like detail marks. So this would be a great time to use the watercolor pencils as well. And I'm definitely a fan of repeated shapes. I like mark making. So again, you're bringing certain parts of the work, you're adding detail, which brings it more to the forefront, which I find interesting rather than things existing on the same plane. And so for here, I think we should add maybe some dark blue. I tend to use a lot of crowns in my work, which have turned into kind of like abstract, wormy crowns. But I went through a phase of really enjoying Jean-Michel Basquiat's work, which I still do. But I don't know, I like to include those little things for him. So with that, you can still see the blue marker, but it's definitely behaves more like a watercolor. Now for the yellow. I really enjoy yellow and pink. So I think I'm going to do that. And so for blending watercolor, sometimes you'll just want to test it out a little bit. So you can either test it out on the same paper or another paper, but I'm just going to go right in and not test it. I also really enjoy working with fluorescence. So you can include touches of fluorescent color into your work. I think that's even better. Right. I said I was going to add it to the yellow. So again, I'll dab one side of it to make it look like it's coming closer to you. It's pretty dry. So here for detail, I'll use a smaller brush. So this one's quite small. I've also enjoyed using some ink with watercolor. But I find, I don't think I'd start, if you're just starting watercolor, I don't think I'd start with watercolor and ink, just because ink is so, once you add it, there's really no going back. But it definitely creates some interesting effects. And really makes your watercolors pop as well. Because bright colors usually are better with darker colors around them. I also find that when you're doing like smaller detail things, it's best to hold the brush farther to the end so you have more control. Which seems counterintuitive, but it works. Right, so I won't dab that. I'll leave it, have it vibrant. And then I'm also going to add some more detail over here with the dark blue again. This was kind of an electric blue. And usually when I make work, I'm listening to music as well. So I find whatever I'm listening to will kind of impact the pace that I'm working at, as well as even the work itself. When I'm having a lot of trouble getting into work, I'll listen to classical or just instrumental or things I'm really familiar with. So I've made a lot of work to the Beatles.
Emily, we do have a comment that I wanted to share. Ivana says, your work is looking beautiful so far. I do have a question about scale. Is there a particular scale that you like working in? Do you like working in a larger scale or a smaller scale?
Yeah, it depends. With watercolor, it's definitely easier to work on a smaller scale. So we've been doing like a 5x5 piece. This is a nice medium size, because I find if you go really big, it gets kind of overwhelming. But I have been trying to challenge myself to do more of like the 24 by, I don't know, 24 by 24 even. But
very good. We do actually have an exhibition right now in the gallery called Building Your AGA that works in larger scale. It basically, it's the 10th anniversary of the gallery, and it has they've taken photos from the build of the gallery and sort of exploded them, which is really lovely to see. But they also have maquettes, the original maquettes that were built for the competition that was the art gallery. Have you ever worked in maquette or models at all?
I've had to a little bit for school. Because I've taken some sculpture and 3D classes, so we usually had to make maquettes for that. But usually in my own work, not so much, but sometimes I have used plasticine to kind of plan out things spatially, just because I'm such a visual person. I just needed that extra kind of planning.
Yeah, the layer. Yeah, for sure. Well, I really I've checked out some of your work with the animations that you've made, which are wonderful. And even though they're 2D, they have so much dimension and depth to them. So if you want to check out Emily's work, she has a wonderful Instagram that can show some of her animation work, which is also really fun and whimsical. Well, it's looking really good, Emily. It's looking awesome. Is there any way we're going to be able to see this particular piece?
Oh yeah, I will definitely post it. Yeah, my Instagram is just my name at Emily Storvold. So I'll post it there when it's done. Yeah, and when I finish it, I let it dry and then remove the tape, but I don't let the tape sit too long because then paper will tear.
Right. Okay, good to know. We do have a question. What is a maquette? A maquette is a small version of, so for architecture or set design, it's a small version, or for even for stop motion animation, it's a small version of a set, basically, or a building. So it's can be in any kind of scale, but it's just a smaller version of what that building is going to look like. So oftentimes in large buildings, you'll see the architect set maquette. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything you wanted to add? We are almost at time here, which is crazy because it's flown by. Was there anything last minute adjustments to that piece? This is a good question, actually. How do you know when a piece is done?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I usually end up, I'll leave it for a little bit, like I'll leave it for a couple of days and kind of just stand there and look at it until it feels, I don't know, something will click. Like it'll just, I don't know, feel right. And then sometimes I'll have to ask someone else to look at it and be like, is this done?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, just blank eyes. Yeah, fresh eyes. For sure. Okay, well, maybe I'll leave you for one last session and then we'll pop off here.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'll just finish doing that blue here. So next, I think I would probably work on this area because it's so central to the piece that I'd want to make sure that enough activity was going on there. So to do that, let's use this peach. So just kind of build in another shape, perhaps. And again, if you're a planner, definitely draw these out beforehand. But yeah, again, I find it's just so much more fun if you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But there's also more room for error if you do it that way. That's quite light, so I'm just going to add, let's do more blue since we already have a lot of blue going on. Sometimes I find I'm repeating the shapes too much, so I'll just find if you lighten them, it kind of changes the effect. Since we have red there. So again, we're kind of working on that diagonal line. And I find sometimes the paint will come off on the rag, and you can create more textures. Sometimes it's kind of cool. You can emphasize that maybe. Let's get that almost airbrushed. And if you paint a lot, there's a chance that you'll probably try to drink out of your paint water. I've definitely almost done it, so be careful. All right. So at this point, I'd probably let it sit and maybe even let it sit for a couple of days.
Very good. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. And I can definitely see what you mean about drinking out of your, especially if you have a tea right beside your water, then yeah.
Yeah, it's good to keep some space.
Most definitely. Or get used to maybe always having your water in one place. Well, I just wanted to pop on and say thank you to our wonderful guest and gallery attendant, Emily Storvold. Make sure you do check out her work and do come to the gallery and say hello to us. There's plenty of space to physical distance, and you have to pre-book all of your tickets online. And the children's gallery is also open. We're open to one cohort per day. You just have to pre-book that as well. We hope that you come by, and we do miss you. There's lots of AGA lives coming up as well, so make sure you stay updated on our social media. And we also want to again thank our new presenters, EPCOR. We look forward to sort of working with them and for them giving us the resources we need in order to make art a little bit more accessible with all of these virtual lives and all of our online school programming as well. I think that's everything. I feel like I've been talking too much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you again, Emily. That piece looks amazing, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of your work. And I hope everyone has a really lovely day. All right. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.